Welcome back, everybody. So today we will be discussing the muscles of the thoracic wall, and I will be referring to this document within the notes that has a summary table of everything you need to know about the muscles of thoracic wall, and they're basically the superficial and the deep muscles. And so what we were going to be diving into is the origins and the insertions of those muscles and the types that are present, and according to Siersky, what he likes to hear about those muscles. Once you mention them and you list them all, sometimes he lets you just be with that, and sometimes he would really want you to dive into the origins and insertions. So when you study this, you just have to know what muscles surround those thoracic wall, and where they insert, and then where the origin is. So that's what I'll be showing you. What I'll do is dive into what they are here, and then I'll show you exactly what those muscles, where those muscles are situated, and hopefully where they insert and they come out from. Okay, so first let's just dive into here. So in this, on page 151 slash 152, you would find all of them listed according to what can be a sufficient answer for your test question if this one pops up. So the superficial muscles of the thoracic wall are the muscles that surround the thoracic wall in particular, and are in very close relations with structures that surround the thorax, mainly the ribs, the clavicle, sometimes also the what is called the scapula. These are major bones that help for the like the origin and also for insertions sometimes. Okay, so the superficial muscles of the thorax are so what they're mainly required for is they move the pectoral gird, and so they also help protect the thorax and the mainly the organs that are found within the thorax. So so let's just dive into it. So they mainly consist of the Pectoralis Major, the minor, the subcavius, and the Serratus Anterior. And so what these are the main muscles, and then I would say these are the surrounding the thorax superficially. And so what this means is that they are aligned outside the ribs, and then so the deep ones are there's a superficial layer, the middle layer, and the deepest layer, and they're all named intercoastal muscles because they're present within and between the ribs. So the superficial layer made up is called the external intercostal muscle, and the middle layer is called the internal intercostal muscle, and the deepest layer is the innermost intercostal muscle. And so look here, it says the external muscle anteriorly replaced external intercostal membrane, elevates the ribs during respiration, increases thoracic volume. So they're found connecting the ribs on the outside, like on the most anterior part of it. So the middle layer is just found deeper to that. It says here posteriorly replaced by internal intercostal membrane, lower ribs during expiration. And then the deepest layer is the innermost, so it'll be the most deepest to both of those. Lower ribs during expiration, that's their function. So it will just decrease the thoracic volume. And all of those muscles right here, they're basically forming the deep muscles of thoracic wall, plus three of them that have not been mentioned on this document, but the subcoastal muscles, the transverse thoracic muscles, and the levator coastarum. And those three additional ones that I mentioned right now are part of the deep. Okay, so let's just dive into let's say the Pectoralis Major. So the origin, it has two heads. It has the clavicular head and the sternocostal head. So the clavicular head originates from the medial half of the clavicle, and the sternocostal head from the anterior surface of the sternum and the superior 6 costal cartilages, and the abdominal part that has also an abdominal part, which arises from the aponeurosis of the external oblique muscle. Okay, so the insertion of all of these heads are in the lateral lateral intertubercular sacculus of the humerus. So if we look at this muscle right here, and it's this one basically, so I will isolate it. So what happens is that we see that there is three parts to it. So you see that there is a clavicular part, a clavicular head. There's the sternocostal head right here, and then there's finally the abdominal part. Okay, and these are the three origins. As we said, we have the clavicular head originates from the medial half of the clavicle. The sternocostal head originates from the anterior surface of sternum and superior 6 costal cartilages. So here, anterior surface of the sternum and the superior 6 costal cartilages. Okay. And then finally, you have the abdominal part, the aponeurosis of the external oblique muscle. When you study external oblique muscle, you'll find that it has an aponeurosis. So that's where the abdominal part originates from. And all of them insert into the humerus. Here, it's the intertubercular sacculus of the humerus. So you have the two tubercles, I think the lesser and the greater tubercles, and then so between them there's a sulcus, and that's where the pectoralis major inserts. Okay. Then we're gonna, okay, so the pectoralis major is innervated by the lateral and medial pectoral nerves, and I think that's an extension of the brachial plexus. You'll study about that in the future. And so what the main function of this pectoralis major is adducts medially, rotates humerus, draws scapula anteriorly and inferiorly. So it does a lot of functions. And so when you know exactly where the humerus, where this muscle inserts on the humerus, you will know exactly that it's adducts and medially rotates the humerus. So adducts means, if you remember, addiction is closed. That's how I remember. So medially rotates, it will rotate the humerus medially, so towards the heart. Okay. Next, we can discuss the pectoralis minor. Where this muscle is, it's below the pectoralis major, and it originates from the 3rd and the 5th rib, and it inserts into the cricoid process of the scapula, and I'll show you how. And it's innervated by the medial pectoral nerve, and the main action is stabilize the scapula by drawing it anterior-inferiorly against the thoracic wall. Okay, so let's just look at this muscle real quickly. Let's go back, and then I'll go hide. So that's the pectoralis minor, and as we have mentioned, that it originates from the 3rd, 4th, and 5th ribs, and it inserts into, let's just hide this one, the cricoid process of the scapula. You see that the cricoid process of the scapula is the insertion point of this muscle. Sorry. Let's just probably hide this one, and then we'll probably dive into it here. So that's the scapula, and that's the cricoid process of the scapula, and that's where the pectoralis minor inserts. And so when it says it stabilizes the scapula, of course, if it's connected to the cricoid process, it will hold the scapula closer to the thoracic wall. So it will draw it anterior-inferiorly, so anterior-wise and inferiorly, because the pectoralis minor is pointing downwards. So that's why it stabilizes it and puts it, stabilizes the scapula and draws it anterior-inferiorly against the thoracic wall. So that's the thoracic wall. Okay. Next, we have the scapula, the subclavius, sorry. So we finished the pectoralis major, this one, and the pectoralis minor. So that's the minor, and that's the major. So the major is on top of the minor. The subclavius is found to be below the clavicle. Sub is below, clavus is clavicle. So from its name, we know that this muscle is found somewhere close to the clavicle. So if we, okay, so maybe let's just do this. Okay, and there. Probably now we can see it a bit more. So that's the subclavius muscle. It's the right one. And so the origins and insertions of this muscle, the origin is the junction of the first rib and its costal cartilage. Okay, and the insertion is the inferior surface of the middle third of the clavicle. And the innervation, from its name, is close to its name, subclavian nerve. and main action is anchors and depresses the clavicle. Very clear and nicely described. So the origin is from the joining of the first rib with its first costal cartilage. So here, somewhere the costal cartilage will be present. It's not present here. Let's just add a connective tissue there. So it originates from somewhere close to this part and to the inferior surface of the middle third of the clavicle. That's the clavicle, and it originates from the inferior middle surface of the clavicle. Okay, there. That is the subclavius. If we isolate it, there. Clavicle, first rib. And so it stabilizes the clavicle. Okay. Next, we will be discussing the serratus anterior. The serratus anterior, I'm just going to click on it and isolate it so that everybody has the view of it. So, as you all may know, the serratus anterior, because it's an anterior, it points towards the anterior part. It reaches very much towards the anterior part. There's also a serratus posterior. Okay, so the serratus anterior is the fourth muscle that we'll be discussing for the intercostal, the thoracic wall. So it originates from the serratus, from the lateral aspects of the ribs 1 to 8. So you have rib number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, sorry, that's not the. So the serratus anterior starts from here. So and it basically originates from the first from the lateral aspects of the first 8 ribs. Also ninth. So the ninth is also involved right here. The first and second ribs, intermediate, the second and third ribs, inferior, the fourth and the ninth ribs. So in this application, it splits them into 3 parts. And so you can see that it originates from 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the inferior part is 4th to 9th. So that's the origin. The insertion is on the, it's very nice that it's described for us here as well. Medial margin of the coastal cartilage of the scapula. So costal surface. So you have the scapula, and remember that the surface of the scapula that is touching the ribs is called the costal surface. And so the serratus anterior inserts into the medial margin. That's the lateral margin, and that's the medial margin, and it inserts on the medial margin on the costal surface. Okay, that's where it inserts. So the action is superior external rotation of the scapula, draws the scapula internally and forward, lowers the arm from a raised position, elevates elevation of the ribs. So these functions will all make sense if you know the insertion and the origin of the muscle and where it's located, and you can just relate to it. That's how you can memorize it very easily. If you just look at this image and look at how it's connected to all those things, and you will understand this action and not forget it. So the nerve supply, long thoracic nerve, the brachial plexus. Okay, here, long thoracic nerve from the brachial plexus. This is just some main, some function, but this is also good to know. Just to look at it like that, posteriorly, laterally. Okay, that's the serratus anterior. And okay, so that's the fourth muscle. Then we're gonna dive into the, I hope we can see those. Let's just see if they're present here. Yes. Let's see if we can add muscles on here. That's the external oblique. Okay, let's subtract muscles. Let's see where we can go. Okay, so these here, let's see. Okay, so let's subtract muscles and let's see where we can head. Yes, internus, externus, there we go. There, and that, what is that? Innermost, you see? So these are how the deepest muscles are. So superficial layer, this is the externus, okay? The middle is the internus. And then when we subtract those two out and we take them, we find the innermost. So these are the deep, okay? And then finally, the ones that I wanted to discuss is basically, let's see, so this one right here, that's the transversus thoracis here, transverse thoracis, okay? This is like a spider web present here on the front part of the like it's present just posteriorly to the sternum. It's called the transverse thoracis. The subcoastalis, let's see if I can find this subcoastalis, and the levator coastarum. Okay, let's see if we can find them there. So I hope are these the ones here? Levator's coastarums. Okay, these are some additional muscles that you guys may need to know. Okay, and the subcoastalis, let me see. You can't, there's a lot of types actually, but yeah, I think these are the ones here, subcoastalis. So you have subcoastalis, okay, and then you have the levator's coastarums and the transversus thoracis, okay? So just these are sufficient enough. You don't really need to know exactly the origins and stuff like that, because it's not very, like, Sersky did not teach us this, but it's nice if you know them. But okay, so the deep muscles, the ones I told you, the 3 layers, they're all innervated by the intercostal nerves, okay? And you don't need to know anything about those. Just mention them for additional information. So this was the whole basic idea about the thoracic muscles and what you need to mention. And I think it'll be sufficient enough for your answer. Thank you very much for joining this video. I hope it was very useful for your studying. And if you don't understand anything or if you have doubts, please text me.